is, as with any meeting that you might have, preparation is really important, and the same goes with meetings with congressional staff. The time that you're spending on this webinar is part of that effort. I could say first, you'll want to learn more about the members of Congress that you'll be meeting with. Right now, that's kind of tough because we don't have a schedule yet and you don't know who you're meeting with, but there is, I think, some work you could do now to get prepared. First, if you don't know who represents you in Congress, you can navigate to Senate.gov and House.gov, where there are prompts to help you. Once you know who represents you in the Senate and the House, you can take a few minutes to learn more about them. Where you can find more information, I think every one of the voting members of Congress has or should have a website, and their websites include a lot of good information. So you can find biographical information, a list of issues that they care about. Even recent news and press releases can be kind of illuminating. Maybe in your research you'll find that you went to the same school or share a similar hobby. There are things that you sort of connect with, even just with the office. When we've established who you and your teammates are meeting with, this exercise is going to make you more prepared to do that further research. Other than research on the members of Congress themselves, you'll want to review NADP's background on the industry in your state and the issues that we're going to be discussing. So one great resource are the NADP state fact sheets, and these can be downloaded from the NADP Knowledge Center online. We don't yet have those published new for this year, but we will be doing that shortly. Still, I would say that the ones that are online now are going to be very relevant and helpful. But they have some great statistical information on the national industry and also have state-specific information. Also, the group, so your team, you're going to have an opportunity to sort of role play when we're doing training on site in DC. But we would strongly encourage you and your team to meet via conference call prior to the event to get to know each other, to maybe assign who is going to talk about what issue at the meeting, those sorts of conversations. But with all of that research and practice, we really don't want you to get overwhelmed, so please don't be nervous. Congressional staffers are by and large happy to meet with you and are very welcoming. I think Lisa sort of mentioned this before. They want to hear from you. They want to hear from constituents on issues that matter. So healthcare and what we'll be talking about in April with congressional staff is incredibly relevant, and they do want to hear from us. They might ask clarifying questions, but it's not necessarily to challenge you or to argue. If you don't have an answer to a question, you don't need to feel the need to make anything up. You can always say something like, oh, that's a good question, and offer to follow up to get the answer. And at that point, not knowing something really turns into an opportunity to sort of keep the relationship going and the lines of communication open. So I want to kind of pose a question to Gary. If in your experience meeting with representatives on the state or the federal level, what are some of the ways that you learn about your representatives? What are some of the things you try to look for, or maybe just more generally, ways to be more comfortable being on the Hill?
Sure. You made some good points already regarding the staff, and then I mentioned that we are a resource to them. They are looking for our feedback. We are the subject matter experts, so I take great comfort in that. When I'm doing any type of research, though, and I try to be as prepared as possible before going into any of these types of meetings, I'm fortunate because we have lobbyists in 7+ states and various legal counsel and a national firm to resource. If you don't have that, and I know some of you do have those resources, then I do what everyone else out there does, use something called the Google, and you can go in and find almost everything online these days in a matter of minutes. Addition to that, I look at their website. Every legislator has their own website. And the interesting part about that is that's what they want you to know about. That's what they're sharing. That's what they're interested in you knowing about them and what they believe, how they're linking or connecting with their constituents. So those are great areas of opportunity to connect with them. Additional to that, I try to make it as personable as possible. I will ask them in my research if I find something, I come across something of interest to me and or a company. I'm an ex-military, so I often see a lot of ex-militaries in government. We can talk about that. And all of us know someone who's had some kind of interaction with dental benefits. So to really being treated with respect. They have an inordinate amount of work that they do, and they are the gatekeepers. So I treat them just like I would treat a legislator, and I give them the same courtesies, and I try to find similar ways to connect with them that I would the member of Congress.
That's awesome. Thanks, Gary. We can keep moving through here, but I know I'll keep asking Gary some more questions. And I think I really don't have to tell you all this what's on the slide, but it's important to be on time and even early to these meetings. So apart from just being the right thing to do, actually getting there early will give you time to sort of collect yourself with your team. Maybe you had to rush there, maybe another meeting was pushed later. It'll give you some time to catch your breath even. Also, if you're there early, another way to learn more about the office is just the office space. A lot of times they're going to display items of interest to them or awards from organizations that they work with. You really never know if there's something on the wall that would be another connection for you in that office. And really now that you've showed up early, you may have to wait. This is just sort of the reality of DC and the Hill. It could be that the staffer or member had to go to vote on the floor. There are a lot of reasons the schedule could get turned around. Just be patient and really gracious to everyone in the office. And I would say use the time to look over your notes. And of course, don't take it personally when the staffer is late. Also, space in congressional offices are often limited. Your meeting could take place in a reception area, in the hallway, in another location. I'm not saying you'll be doing the walk and talk like on the West Wing, but a couple of the best meetings that I've ever had have actually been in the hallway, as opposed to where I thought it was going to be like in the office. And don't take schedule changes personally, as oftentimes the change is due to circumstances sort of outside of the staffer's control. And also, some of the staffers you'll meet with will look incredibly young, and this is sort of par for the course in DC, and in fact, the world is really run by tenacious folks of all ages. And staffers are, I think Gary and Lisa have said this already, are who you will meet with generally, and they really do run the office. They tell the member of Congress about the meeting and whether or not they should support or oppose any given issue. And I think all of that is to say flexibility is really the name of the game in DC. Things change for better or worse at a moment's notice, and kind of just all have to roll with it and always continue to try and be a resource to those we're meeting with. And I'll stop and see if, Gary, you have more to add on sort of the realities advocates may face on the Hill, or maybe you might have a couple stories too.
Yeah, there's something to be said for flexibility. If you aren't already aware, you may be surprised at the different sizes of offices in the capitals, whether it be at the national or the state level. I remember just last month we were in Washington State, and we were crammed, 6 of us, into what appeared to be a closet. And the legislator acted as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Half of us didn't have a place to sit. We were standing. One person was actually in the doorway. Another was looking into the doorway. So don't be surprised. Don't be shocked. And don't think the legislator doesn't already know what you're thinking. They want a bigger office too. A really nice, I guess, part of the flexibility is the benefits that you get. Amy mentioned the idea that she had some of her best meetings in the halls. Well, we were trying to speak with a legislator. We were unable to get on his calendar, so we were speaking with another legislator outside of his office in the hallway. And who happened to walk by? That legislator we couldn't get on their calendar. Perfect segue. The legislator we were speaking with introduced us, transitioned it well, and we had a nice 5-10 minute conversation, just as if we would have been in their office. So it really can work out well by being flexible. And then those who haven't been to DC, when we're transitioning between buildings, there's this whole underground area, very similar to what I've heard about in Disneyland, where most people are walking. And we bumped into 3 different legislators last year when I participated in the orthodontic group's Day on the Hill. And it's funny because it's really casual at that point, right? It's not so informal. It really feels actually a little more organic. The conversation conversation that we need to have, we need to be prepped for regardless of where we are. So being flexible is about being prepared as well. So we want to make sure we have our talking points and be prepared to talk at least generically at any time throughout the days that we're there.
Mm-hmm. Gary, I love that story. Thanks for sharing it. I'm going to use that one later. Our next don't comes with a good sort of Calvin and Hobbes clip that you see on the screen, and it's pretty cute. I don't think we'll want to be as concise as Calvin is here, but we do want to avoid going so in depth or into the weeds or off on tangents that would lose the focus of the meeting or lose the attention of the staffer. We have to remember that meetings could be as short as 10 to 15 minutes. Some will be longer, but we want to stay at a higher level with both the background that we're giving and our specific asks and the issues that we're talking about. We also need to remember to listen, listening to their questions, any feedback they have. Even if they disagree with your position, it's good to listen, be cordial and understanding. And all that being said, we also want to make sure that the information we're providing is personal, and that includes an impact to us and the district or the state. And in fact, the Congressional Management Foundation, which we noted the results of their study on a previous slide, puts this in a way that really seemed to stick for me. We need to convey information into head, heart, and health. So head means what's going on with the legislation or policy issue you're talking about. Why do you support or oppose it? Is there any relevant supporting data? So the background, the facts. Heart means a personal impact or a story. So this could be the impact to an individual, to consumers, families, businesses. It can be hard when we're talking about insurance and other complex topics to make things personal, but there is a story for everything. So being forced to refile products 5 times with some amount of cost is one thing, but there's a person or a team that's having to do that work. So talking about stories from a personal perspective is really important. And the last point is health, and this means health of the district. So the staffer is going to need to know how the issue impacts the district or the state. So they need to be able to give this information back to their boss, who is very concerned about how his or her actions are going to impact voters in their district. So it's also an important component. And sometimes as going through these meetings, there's great rapport, and we provide some great background, and the meeting is really going well, and we either forget or maybe we're nervous or reticent to actually make the sale. We have to remember to ask the representative to co-sponsor, to sign a letter, whatever it is that we're there to do or we want them to do, we have to remember to make that ask. They expect it. They welcome it. They really want to hear about ways that they can positively impact the issues that you've described. It's often the case that staffers won't be able to commit at the meeting, but that's where your follow-up and being a resource over time really come into play.